Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we begin our study of the first book of Kings, that's Melachim Aleph, chapter 18, that's Perek Yud Ches. If you recall, we were just studying chapter 17 together, where we read of Obadyahu and Elijah the prophet. We read of his declaring a famine, and and that the rain would stop for 3 years and the land would be famished. And he did that because he was protesting the King Ahab, the evil King Ahab, who had led the people astray and led the people of the Kingdom of Israel away from God and towards the idol worship, and led them in all of their corrupt practices and so on. After that, we learned of some of the early exploits of Eliyahu, as he was basically separated himself from the king's palace. It would seem that Eliyahu was one of the prophets, or maybe a leading or the leading prophet in the king's house, whose job it was to lead the king in the right way. Eliyahu saw the corruption and felt that interestingly, and we're going to see why this is important as we study today's chapter as well, Eliyahu declared it on his own. He declared this terrible calamity on his own. He wasn't told, or at least we don't see any reference to the fact that he was told this by God. So he himself decided that the way to go about fixing the behavior of the people would be through punishing them with a famine. I would like to submit that the other events we studied in chapter 17, which are going to lead into chapter 18, are really God teaching Eliyahu that his path is not proper, his choices are not proper, his goal is proper. His goal, which is to bring the people led by their king back to God, is the proper goal, but his choice of method is not right. Not right because, and I'll say this, it's not the job of a person, of a prophet, to declare punishments upon people. That's left to God. It's the job of the prophet to bring people closer to God in the proper way, to engage with them, not to separate, but to engage. Now, let's see. I just want to remind you of some of the episodes that we saw in chapter 17. The first thing God says to Eliyahu, you wanted to punish people? I am going to show you how you are dependent upon other people. And he went and he was by the Nachal, by the Wadi, the small stream, and he was fed by the Orvim. Whether that's understood to be ravens, miraculous birds bringing him food, or Orvim meaning merchants, Arab merchants that brought him food. Regardless, he taught Eliyahu how he is dependent upon others, right? That all people are dependent upon others, which should teach us the lesson that we need to work to help each other, and that's the way to bring people closer to God. The second lesson, God says to him, I'm going to show you when the stream dries up, you're necessary, you need nature. People need nature. When the stream is dry, you have to leave. And what did he do? The next thing he says, I'm going to show you that other people are ready to help you. You are dependent on others. So therefore, the lesson should be that you should be helping others, not punishing them. And that's why God led him to the widow. I recommend that you review chapter 17 to see all these points. I will show you that people are ready to help you. A widow who has nothing is willing to bring you into her house and feed you. And then I will show you how depressed and how awful this punishment that you decided people should deserve, that this is the way we should bring them back to God. When an innocent child gets sick and his spirit leaves him, and you are required to bring him and revive him and bring him back to life. This is the result of your declaration. And now God comes to Eliyahu and says, at the beginning of chapter 18, Vayihi yamim rabim, it was many days that this terrible famine was ongoing. Udvar Adonai haya Eliyahu, v'shana hashlishis leimar. And the word of God came to Eliyahu in the third year, saying as follows, Lech hera'eh el Achav, I want you to go appear before Achav. That's how you should. Then v'etna matar al pnei adamah, that is when I will bring rain back to earth. You, Eliyahu, declared before, only it will be on my word That was what you, Eliyahu, said in the first verse of chapter 17. On my word will the rain come back. God said, no, etna, I will be the one who decides when rain comes back to the earth, and it will happen when you go back to Achav's house, not when you run away and you separate yourself. The way to bring it about is to be engaged, which is why what's about to happen is about to happen. Vayelech Eliyahu lehiraot el Achav. Eliyahu then went, because God commanded him to be seen in Achav's house. V'hara'av chazak b'Shomron. At this time, there was a terrible, terrible famine in Samaria, in Shomron, which is where the capital now is of the northern kingdom of Israel, where it remained until its destruction many years later. Vayikra Achav el Obadyahu asher al habayis. And Achav called to Obadyahu. Obadyahu, literally his name means the one who worships God, right? Who was in charge of his house. And Obadyahu was a righteous man, a prophet in his own right. And he, Obadyahu, he was a very God-fearing man. Now, this is, and Obadyahu had very conspicuously chosen a path, the opposite of Eliyahu's path, right? Eliyahu said, no, I'm leaving, I can't stay here in this house, I can't stay here and try to influence this house, but rather I'm getting out of here, and I want God to punish these people with a famine in order to bring them back. But Obadyahu chose an entirely different path. And because he stayed, this is verse 4, B'hachrit Izabel, when Jezebel, the Achav's wife, the queen, when she cut off and killed out Nevi'ei Adonai, all of the prophets of God, Vayikach Obadyahu mea Nevi'im, Obadyahu was able to hide, to take 100 of the prophets, Vayachbiyem, and hide them. 50 people, Ba'ma'ara, in a cave, presumably 50 in one and 50 in another. V'chil kalam lechem u'mayim, and he was able to bring them bread and water. So Obadyahu is the example of a person who chooses a completely different path that Eliyahu chose. God is about to bring about a meeting between Eliyahu and Obadyahu, because he wants to teach Eliyahu that your path was wrong. That was not the right way to go. Vayomer Achav el Obadyahu. Achav says to Obadyahu, Lech ba'aretz al kol ma'inei hamayim. I need you to travel through the land to all of the places where there are springs with water. V'al kol hanechalim, and all of the streams. Ulai nimtzach chatzir. Maybe we can find some kind of green grass. So that we can allow our horses and our mules to eat, so that we shouldn't be left without any animals. In other words, their animals were starving to death, and in a time when people were dependent upon animal labor to accomplish their tasks. Without animals, they would be nothing. And they divided up the country to pass through the land. The king himself went on one path himself. And Obadyahu went on another path by himself. Here we see Achav, who is portrayed in most of the verses that we see as a terrible, terrible king. But here he's willing to go on his own, wander through the land in order to find food for the animals. And Obadyahu cooperates and does this because at this time, it's not a time to be arguing about philosophy. It's not a time to be arguing about a religion. It's a time to be rolling up your sleeves and doing what's necessary to help the people and save them from starvation, to help the animals and save them from starvation. Vayihi Obadyahu baderach. So then Obadyahu was walking on the road. I'm at verse 7. V'hinei Eliyahu l'kraso. And behold, here is Eliyahu coming to greet him, coming up the road the other way. Vayakirehu, he immediately recognized him. Vayipol al panav, and he fell on his face, and he said, Vayomer ha'atah ze adoni Eliyahu, are you my master Eliyahu? Obadyahu obviously knew him from before when he was there, when they worked together as fellow prophets in the house of the king, whose job then was to help lead the king and the country in the right direction towards God. Eliyahu, who had chosen the path of abandoning the king because of the king's idolatry, because of the king's evil ways, but Obadyahu decided to stay. Here we have the meeting between the two of them. Vayomer lo ani, and he said, yes, this is me. And immediately Eliyahu tells him what to do. Lech emor ladonecha hinei Eliyahu. Apparently Eliyahu disagreed with his path. He said, go to your master, because he's not my master, even though he was the legitimate king, right? But he says, go to your master, that Eliyahu has arrived. Vayomer, and Obadyahu says to Eliyahu, Mecha tasi, what kind of sin have I committed? What is, you think I'm such a, what did I do wrong? That you are telling, you're putting me in the position that Ahab is going to kill me. You want me to go to Ahab and tell him Eliyahu is here? Chai Adonai Elohecha, by the life of the Lord your God, right? And he points out your God, and we'll see. And I submit here. Obviously, we know that he doesn't mean your God as opposed to mine. He means your God because you have followed God on a path, on this godly, in quotes, path of asceticism, a godly path of living out in the wilderness, a godly path of wandering out on your own and not being involved in the troubles of the people, right? And we'll see in a couple verses where I get this from. But here he says, but that's why he points to God, your God, the way you chose. But by the Lord your God, by his life, if he lives, if he exists, im yesh goy, if there's even one nation, umamlacha, or kingdom, asher sholach adoni sham levakchecha, that my master, the one who you called my master, the king, he's been searching you out. And the amru ayin, and they all said he's not there. V'hishpia et hamamlacha v'et hagoy ki lo yimsoeka, and he made each one of those kingdoms swear that they could not find you. Presumably, he's searching all around because he wants to kill Eliyahu. But it doesn't really say that in the verse. It is possible, right, that he is searching out Eliyahu because he genuinely wants help. It is possible that Eliyahu, by not being there, missed an opportunity to help bring the king and work with the king and bring him closer to God. But now, he's been searching all over the place. Now you're telling me, Lech emar la'adonecha hinei Eliyahu, here's Eliyahu. In other words, you know where he is, I, Obadyahu, know, and you've been hiding him from us this whole time? And what's going to happen? And listen to what he says here, which is absolutely astounding. Obadyahu says, what's going to happen? I'm going to leave you. I'm going to go to the king. V'ruach Adonai yisa'acha el asher lo eidah. And the Spirit of God, and this is kind of said in a sarcastic way, is going to carry you to some other place that I don't even know of. In other words, while I'm here working, while I'm here helping the people, while I'm here working with the king, right, you're going to go off into spirit land. You're going to go off into your meditation land. Uvasi lahagid li Achav, and then I'm going to come and tell Achav, and I'm going to tell him that I know where you are, and then v'lo yimsa'acha, and they won't find me, v'haragani, and they're going to kill me. V'abdecha yorei et Adonai min uroi, and I don't deserve to die. Obadyahu says, I've been a God-fearing person. Don't you tell me, Eliyahu, you can't tell me that I deserve to die like all the other idol worshippers, because I'm not. I've been worshiping God. Halo hu gad ladoni, surely you know what I've been doing here. It's not like I've been sitting here, this is verse 13, doing nothing, twiddling my thumbs. Esa sharasisi, surely you know what I've been doing here, and the fact that I've stayed here with Ahab, what have I done? What have I accomplished? Baharogi Zevel et Nevi'ei Adonai, when Izebel killed out all of the prophets of God, va'achbi min Nevi'ei Adonai me'a'ish, and I was able to hide and save from among the prophets 100 men, 50 ish b'ma'ara, 50 each in 2 different caves, va'achalkaleim lechem u'mayim, and I fed them bread and water. V'ata omer, and now you're telling me lech amor la'adonecha hinei Eliyahu v'haragani, that I should tell you that I know where Eliyahu is, while you're going wander off into your spiritual la la land with your God. I've been here. I've been working. What are you? So Vayomer Eliyahu learned this lesson a little bit. He heard from Obadyahu, and he said, Chai Adonai tzvaos asher amadti lefanav, by the Lord of by the life. And when it says here by the life, I want to say it doesn't of course mean that God lives. It's an expression of saying as God exists, as there is such a thing, as God exists, asher amadti lefanav, that God whom I stood before, ki hayom eira'eh elav, I will appear before him, before Achav the king, today. In other words, I will not go wander off away. Because of course Eliyahu knew that God had already instructed him to appear before Ahab. God had already instructed him to be there. Vayelech Obadyahu likras Ahab. So therefore, once Eliyahu guaranteed that he's not going to go wander off into wherever, Obadyahu went to greet Ahab, vayaged lo, and he told him. Presumably, one would assume that number one, Obadyahu knew where to meet Ahab, which Eliyahu would not have necessarily known. And also, Eliyahu did not want to introduce himself to Ahab right away, because that would have been too much of a shock. He might have just killed him right away for abandoning the people. But and so therefore Obadyahu went, and this way it might mitigate things a little bit. Vayaged lo, and he told him, Vayelech Achab likrat Eliyahu, and Achab went to greet Eliyahu, to greet Elijah. Vayehi kirot Achab et Eliyahu, and it happened when Achab saw Eliyahu, he saw Elijah. Vayomer Achab elav, and Achab said to him, Ha'ata ze ocher Yisrael? Are you the one who has troubled or ruined Israel? Now I want to talk a little bit about this word ocher, ayin chaf resh. The word ocher is almost always used in the concept of somebody who's upsetting the order. When things are peace, a group or a society is moving along well, and an ocher comes along and just ruins it and wrecks it. Not in a constructive way, but in a destructive way. Someone who just unsettles the equilibrium in the society. I'll give you a few examples so you'll see it. The first place where the word turns up is in Bereshit, in Genesis, Parak Lamed Daled, chapter 34, where the story of Shimon and Levi, Simon and Levi, Shimon and Levi, who went and killed out the people of the city of Shechem after they had circumcised themselves, after their leader's son had raped Dinah, the sister of Shimon and Levi. And after they had done this terrible act of killing out all the people, Yaakov said, their father said to Shimon and Levi, Achartem osi, you have ruined me. L'havisheni biyoshev haaretz, now you have made me hated among the people of the land, of the Canaanites and the Perizzites. Ani misei mispar, they're going to come and they're going to kill me, and I will be destroyed. In other words, we had settled here, we had worked out agreements, arrangements. People thought of us as a peaceful tribe, a peaceful group with which they can do business and work, and you just ruined it all. Another place where we see this used is in Yoshua, in Joshua 7, where there was a cherem, placed on all of a prohibition placed on all of the items from the city of Jericho, which was the first city to be captured in the new land of Israel. And Achan went and took from the cherem, took from the property that he wasn't allowed to do, which ended up ruining things. Joshua was leading the people in victories, and he ruined the whole thing. Vayomer Yoshua, in verse 25, Joshua said, Me achartanu, how have you ruined us, right? Because of what he had done. And we see several places, we see the same things, issues. So over here, Achav is choosing a very interesting word here. Achav is pointing out to Eliyahu something which would have hit Eliyahu deep in the heart, because of the speech that Eliyahu was just given by Obadyahu, right? Which and the hint, not the hint, but the outright command that God gave Eliyahu was to go back. And Achav said, "You are the Ocher Yisrael. You are the one that ruined the people of Israel, right? You ruined everything. You could have been here to help when you were needed. You could have been here with Obadyahu who helped, but you didn't." Of course, Achav also meant, right, other things, right, which might not have been such wonderful thoughts. But remember that here we're looking at this little glimmer of goodness within the man who was overall bad, and that is, you were Ocher Yisrael. You should have stayed here. You should have been here with us when we needed you. Vayomer, and Eliyahu here didn't get that message. He didn't get that message. And he will get the message eventually, as we learn through and study Eliyahu's life, as God teaches him that message. But Eliyahu says, Lo acharti es Yisrael. I am not the one who troubled and ruined Israel. Ki emato ve'savicha. And Eliyahu, of course, brings out the truth, which is the ultimate truth is, of course, that the one who made this whole problem is you and your father's house. Ba'azovchem et mitzvot Adonai, because you're the ones who abandoned God. And you're the ones that decided to go after the Baalim, to go after the idols of the Baal. Now, so had you not done that, we would have all been on the right path. So that's the right path that I was supposed to lead you on. But Achav's point and Obadyahu's point is still a very important, and God's point to Eliyahu. We had three people telling him the same point, and that is that by leaving, by abandoning us, you didn't bring us closer to God, but rather you weren't here when we needed you. You declared trouble and problems which didn't bring the people closer to God. And then and I'm going to stop here, and the next podcast we're going to look at a way that Eliyahu tried to bring the people closer to God, but still didn't get the message that God really wanted to teach Eliyahu about how to bring the people closer to God, which he will eventually learn, but we'll get there. So thank you so much for studying the first half of chapter 18 together. Looking forward to studying the second half and many, many more chapters together, and of course the entire book of Kings together. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.